proposition, we have WSCC Malaysia Jam. On the opposition, we have WSCC Malaysia NKB. And judging this grand finals will be Calvin, Jasmine, Sonia, Roshan, Jay, Mithrun, Samir, Izzat, and myself. Okay. The motion that was prepared by both teams for this grand final is this house supports rainbow capitalism. Before we start, I would like to ask if everyone could put their phones on silent so as to not distract. And also, could everyone please keep your cheering and jeering to a minimum and only clap before and after speeches. Alright? Okay, without further ado, I'd like to invite the first proposition speaker, Kenya.
Do I need to use a mic or
yes.
am I?
Yes, use the mic.
Test. 18 million people are from the LGBT community in the United States. 18 million people who are excluded, deprived, and forever pushed away from the societal structure of happiness. The stance coming from Team of Proposition comes in twofold. First, we support the integration of products specifically designed for the LGBT community in mainstream capitalism. So the world of Team Proposition is a world where we support products that represent the LGBT community. So for example, we support when the Washington Nationals sell rainbow-themed t-shirts and caps. Second thing we believe in, we support industries specifically targeted for the consumption of the LGBT community. So these are things like gay bars or particular industries like LGBT tourism. Team Opposition must defend a world where capitalism is heteronormative and the LGBT community is forever excluded. Two standards today's debate needs to be adjudicated by. Firstly, is rainbow capitalism principally in line with the LGBT movement? And secondly, in which world do LGBT individuals better attain happiness? On the first, I have two arguments in my speech. Firstly, why rainbow capitalism improves the efficiency of the free market, and secondly, why the LGBT community is better able to access happiness under side of proposition. First argument, why does it improve the efficiency of the free market? So what does an ideal free market look like? But before I proceed, sure.
Why is it justifiable for corporations with profit incentives to espouse upon social justice causes and remove the meaning from the people most affected?
I think it's extremely beneficial if it means that corporations can cater to the LGBT community, that people from the LGBT community aren't excluded from attaining happiness from products, and I think that is a better world for these minorities. So what does an ideal free market look like? An ideal free market is when there's a market equilibrium between supply and demand. In a world without rainbow capitalism, why is there an undersupply and under-demand? What does this market look like? This is a market that is heteronormative. Where can we see this? Firstly, in advertisements where men will always get the girl, and straight heteronormative men are the ones that are always represented. But secondly, when fashion products always appeal to the binary, where men in your advertisements are always buff, women are always in dresses and rarely wearing pants, which fit into the binary. We think this is when minorities are never catered to. So why is there an undersupply and under-demand? There's an under-demand because people oftentimes are scared to demand for more things that aren't heteronormative. They're scared to step out of this current norm of always sticking to the binary, especially when most of these products which you are to demand for are things which cater to the minority of individuals, the LGBT community. I think that's why it's difficult for them to want to demand. So because the demands are more heteronormative, we think that's why corporations are more likely to cater towards the majority where they can make more money. Hence an undersupply of products for these minorities. Have a seat. What are the two harms of this? Firstly, we think the potential output of the market is one that is not fulfilled. LGBT community under your side who have purchasing power aren't contributing to the national output. Why is this? It's due to a lack of a specific market. The fact that products that cater to these individuals are ones which are very little. Under our side, we create that specific market with rainbow capitalism. We think these people can fulfill the potential output of that market even more. But the second problem of that is that you have a lack of products. And we think this comes in two aspects, quantitatively and qualitatively. Firstly, in terms of quantitative, we think you have a lack of types of LGBT products because of this under supply and under demand. But B, you also have a lack of diversity of those little products that you do have. So things like limited sizes or limited colors under your side. So you may have a t-shirt which is rainbow themed, but it's one which is very exclusive. But qualitatively, we think under your side, there's lesser diversity when it comes to these products, where you only have one type of rainbow, for example. Under our side, it's more diverse, meaning you can have many different, more artistic versions of this. But in terms of material, no thank you. We think your material is also one which is poor. Under our side, when rainbow capitalism means that markets have to expand, corporations are more incentivized to make more of these products. They need to compete with other corporations. We think that's when the quality of these products will also get better. But why is the LGBT community under our side better able to access happiness? I think this is very important. But before I proceed, sure.
Why are your products so important if they only cater to the most exclusive white LGBT individual and discard those of intersectionality?
So I think that's quite unfair for you to say, because under our side, rainbow capitalism also means LGBT individuals can also open up their own LGBT corporations, for example. We think that's when more of these individuals are catered to. But even if in the worst case scenario, only the privileged LGBT community are catered to under our side, under your side, you cater to none of them. And I think that means the comparative is better. So let's take a look at why the LGBT community are better able to access happiness. What's the societal construct of happiness? We think society has placed a premium on material wealth. Where do we see this? The glorification of professional jobs or an emphasis on getting expensive luxury items like jewelry or more expensive cars. The ability for someone to be happy is heavily dependent on how they're perceived by society's materialistic standards. The debate isn't about changing these standards, it's about helping the LGBT community access it. And I think it's much better for them to do so under our side. How is the community unable to access happiness under their side? Considering we have proven why there's a limited number of products within the current market, this means to obtain the happiness through these materialistic values, what do these individuals have to do? A, they either not opt into materialism at all. Why is that harmful? Because that means you lose societal validation and people won't look highly of you. But secondly, you opt into that materialism, but you have to sacrifice your own identity. You need to remain closeted as a gay individual, and I think that is one which is harmful because you entrench the birth lottery even more. LGBT don't choose their sexuality, but their ability to access happiness entrenches this very idea. It's easier for a heteronormative individual to access happiness, but for an LGBT community, you must sacrifice so much. Why can't they access it now? Because rainbow capitalism has specific industries catered for the LGBT demand. This means more rainbow-themed products being produced for these individuals. We think these specific products are extremely beneficial to these individuals. We make it more diverse and more of these people can access it. The LGBT community under Team of Proposition can obtain the material form of happiness without having to sacrifice their identity, instead embrace it. Let's ensure that the LGBT community don't have to give up their identity and their beliefs. Instead, let's better empower those choices.
to continue this debate, I'd like to invite the first opposition speaker.
American Apparel made history in 2015 by breaking $1 billion in sales from their Make America Great Again line. $1 billion that was made from erasing bisexuals, asexuals, demisexuals from the LGBT community. This money should not have been attained, and the erasure of our community means more to us than material wealth. That is the stance that opposition will take in this debate. What is the stance coming from the side of opposition? Two stances. Number one, we think pink capitalism is problematic in enforcing conceptions on what it means to be a part of the LGBT community and what it means to be an LGBT individual. Secondly, we think pink capitalism is problematic as it downplays the identities of LGBT individuals and simplifies their identities to what the majority of people assume and they can understand from it. What are the standards this debate must be adjudicated by? One, in which world are the identities of LGBT individuals more likely to be held as legitimate? The second is, in which world are the portrayals of LGBT individuals better? So in our world, we would not have products. We agree. We take that burden. We would take the longer and harder fight to represent the most amount of individuals. We would remove corporatism from pride, and we would like to retain that thing. So what am I going to tell you as leader of opposition? I will tell you why the way pink capitalism operates is inherently problematic towards the LGBT community, and I'll tell you why pink capitalism harms LGBT individuals. My deputy leader of opposition will tell you why it's harder to call out corporations for their problematic practices. But first, I have two responses to the speaker before me. The first, on representation and products. Notice that their entire premise is that these products are good as they are representative. If I can prove that they are not representative, they do not accrue those benefits. Here are two reasons as to why they are not truly representative of the LGBT community. Number one, all the CEOs and individuals who are making the business decisions about these clothing are straight. They don't conform, nor do they consult with the LGBT community before releasing the product. Secondly, if following the Prime Minister's analysis that they pander to the majority, this means they're not representing the LGBT community, but they're representing what the majority thinks of the LGBT community. This is like taking your friend to your favorite restaurant, forcing them to eat the food you want, and then telling him, hey, at least you had dinner. That is what the side of government is trying to force them to accept. Secondly, is the community able to access happiness in our world? Number one, I don't think they prove sufficiently why a t-shirt and slippers created specifically from straight individuals in order to attain profit from the community is the only way for these individuals to attain happiness. Secondly, we prefer a world in which LGBT individuals don't use material to attain happiness. If it means being in a relationship, going out and going to areas and going to pride parades, that is a more preferable way for us to attain the happiness, because at least you don't entrench elitism, you don't entrench classism. That is a preferable world. Before I move into my argument, sure.
In both worlds, capitalism creates a standard of happiness. At least under our world, these standards are true to the identity of the community and are heteronormative that they're coerced to opt into.
No. It's more heteronormative in your world because straight people make the decision. For LGBT people, you let straight individuals decide what the standards of happiness are. We don't think that's a fair comparative for you to push. But first, on a principle level, why can't the LGBT community collaborate with capitalism? We think number one, the LGBT community has faced oppression and has been victimized by being born into circumstances that they did not consent to. The community in principle should also oppose all forms of systems that create similar structures like we think capitalism oppresses individuals the same way. You are born into poverty, you are born into a class, you are forced to work. And the worst part is the LGBT community is complicit with this. American Apparel funds its Make America Gay line by opening sweatshops in China. We think the LGBT community should not entrench suffering in other areas. No, thank you. Second question, how is the way corporations react with regards towards pink capitalism problematic? We think coupling corporations with profit incentives with social justice is not great. In order to make a profit, you must make the messages and the goals of your community and the individuals palatable. What does this translate to? It means making those individuals as relatable as possible. Notice, this isn't only about portraying a gay person as normally as possible, as heteronormatively as possible, but it's also making straight people portray gay individuals. We see this happen with Liza Minnelli and the way she represents American Apparel and the way that she's the face of the LGBT community. But the irony is that she's straight. All what this means is that companies pander towards what people want rather than what the community needs. No thank you. So what happens at the point in which companies do this? Companies don't take controversial stances, or they remove the nuances of controversial messages that the community needs to be talked about. Everyone wants a t-shirt with #LoveWins, but no company wants to print a t-shirt that says #LoveWins, and I wish I could be paid the same amount as my straight ally. So what does this mean? It portrays the problems and they take away the nuances from these problems and they make it seem as if these problems do not exist. They portray one as the most problematic example and the other as second. And secondly, the reason as to why the LGBT community can no longer talk about these issues is because they make these issues seem as the main issues. So for a lot of companies, they portray gay couples being married or having a family, but they don't want to talk about the nitty-gritty parts about the LGBT community or how they suffer with STDs. They never portray this because it's not favorable to the majority. What this means is that companies actively erase the active suffering of individuals within the LGBT community to make a profit. So what is the conclusion then? Oh, secondly, we think these individuals, and when they co-opt the fight, they remove the message of the fight. This is why we were so against Kylie Jenner's Pepsi ad. They appropriated Black Lives Matter to make it seem like it was a world peace movement, compared to a movement that was fighting for police brutality. The harm of this is that the Black Lives Matter movement had to deal with the active ramifications of the advertisement. They had to come up and clarify their stances, that they were for police brutality, not for world peace. Our suffering is not decided by a Pepsi thing, but it's decided by individuals shooting us. So the second thing, how does pink capitalism harm LGBT individuals? They simplify the LGBT experiences down to circumstances that are understandable to the most. Zayn Malik apparently is gender fluid for wearing clothes that are feminine in nature. This is what corporations do. They make message simple and they pander to us straight individuals in order to sell products. What this means is that for an LGBT individual that wants to opt into the truest version of their identity, they can no longer do so, as companies have set standards that are acceptable to the most. So in conclusion, what if I told you? We have conceded. We will not have products in our world. But we told you this is fine, as these products are created by straight individuals that set definitions for gay individuals, individuals that they don't know. We told you that these policies actively erase LGBT individuals. Everyone knows the pride flag. Everyone knows the rainbows, but nobody knows the blue and the red and the white of the bi community. This is a result of companies taking the LGBT community and using it for their own profit. Thank you.
Before we continue, urge debaters to not cheer or cheer during the debate. And to continue this round, let's have the second proposition speaker.
Yes. In a world where 22 countries have already legalized LGBT marriages, we believe it is imperative that not only we give them a say in a market which defines our lives whether the side opposition likes it or not, but also ensure a warmer welcome from society. I'm going to deal with a case coming from side opposition by answering 3 questions. Firstly, about accessibility. Secondly, about the principle of complicity. And thirdly, about your argument about simplifying messages. Before moving on to our positive matter about how we normalize the notion of homosexuality. First issue, about accessibility. The first thing I'll say under this issue is we contest the premise that all gay products are made by straight individuals. We already told you that in the world of rainbow capitalism, it is unfair for them to scope down the debate to only worlds where corporations are led by heterosexual individuals. We see Apple's led by a homosexual CEO. We see in a world with rainbow capitalism, it is much more likely that we will have local LGBT bars or local industries that are led by LGBT individuals. But even if it is true that some corporations are led by heterosexual CEOs, we believe the fact that there is a market out there catered towards LGBT individuals makes it more likely that it will reduce the heteronormativity in their products. Because notice that rainbow capitalism's primary market isn't the heterosexual community, it is the LGBT community. And therefore, we don't think it is reasonable for them to say that even in a market designed for LGBT individuals, they will still use standards for heterosexual individuals. We don't think that makes sense. Have a seat. But secondly, on the issue of materialism, we don't think this debate is reasonable coming from side of opposition to envision a world where materialism doesn't exist. So given that materialism exists, we already argue to you principally that it is unjust to force individuals who have no control over the circumstances of their birth to bear an extra burden in not only fighting discrimination, but also materialism. We believe that this debate must be about who better facilitates their access towards materialism, and we feel they didn't engage with that. But secondly, on the idea of complicity, we find a few problems with this. In their world, it is true that LGBT individuals must not have any form of relation to anyone who has any form of discrimination. They will break ties with all state governments, because every country in this world will have diplomatic relations with at least one country who has homophobic laws. In their world, LGBT individuals will not stand for office because the state has been complicit in producing harms towards the LGBT individuals. We don't think complicity is a metric to whether individuals should participate in the market, but rather which side better facilitates their happiness. Before we move on to my third issue, yes.
Earlier, your Prime Minister told us that companies would pander towards the majority of individuals and make it palatable to each and all individuals. Now you tell us companies would specifically prioritize LGBT individuals to base their products around. How is this not contradictory?
So in the market, there's LGBT individuals, which is our primary market, and heterosexual individuals, which is our secondary market. So sure, our first priority is to make sure that the products are as palatable to the majority of LGBT individuals, but if we can make it accessible to heterosexual individuals also, we'll do that in our world. Third issue, on the issue of simplifying issues. We think that the whole idea about how these products will be heteronormative misses the comparative. Because in a world without rainbow capitalism, there is less of an incentive for corporations to even research about what the LGBT community needs. In a world where there's a market specifically for these individuals, we believe profit-minded corporations have an incentive to find out what they want, have an incentive to find out how different are their needs from the mainstream community. In a world in a world without rainbow capitalism, either A, corporations won't even try to produce products for the LGBT community, or B, they will do so out of assumptions. They will do so out of stereotypes of what they think the LGBT community is. Because the comparative in our world, when there's a sizable market of individuals willing to purchase, have a seat, and able to purchase, these corporations will then research and gain data on what they want and therefore produce better products catered to them. Then they said that they will simplify the message. I think this is preferable. In their world, if they want to present queer theory through journals, which is the most comprehensive form that they can find, we find it highly inaccessible to the majority of society. Not only towards your heterosexual individuals, but to LGBT individuals who are struggling with their identity. Sometimes a simple message is a stepping stone for one to explore what it means to be LGBT. We don't think journals is a better comparative. Lastly, we believe it's highly problematic that they didn't tackle any of the principles coming from Ayman's speech about how, in this world, the materialism is a constant and how we better empower these individuals to access products. how in their world they have to defend a world where people either A, have to give up being materially wealthy and therefore suffer from lack of validation, or B, have to give up their identity in order to access that market. We don't think there's a comparison that's justified. Before I move on to my argument, yes.
In order to pander to the majority, wouldn't companies have to use the stereotypes that you speak of in order to affirm their beliefs and pander to these individuals more?
In a rainbow capitalistic market, our primary market is LGBT individuals. That's the majority we're talking about. So in the majority of the LGBT individuals, they have a certain form of standard. That's why we research and we produce products for them. And then they haven't delivered to us why, in the world of opposition, it is preferable that individuals have to fully cater towards heteronormative standards instead of having some form of representation of the LGBT community. How do we normalize the notion of homosexuality? Because whether we like it or not, the success of the LGBT movement depends on its reception by society. So I'm going to break this into 4 stakeholders. Firstly, LGBT individuals who openly express their sexuality. The increase in visibility means there's more representation for them. There's more likely to have LGBT models on covers. There's more likely to have individuals wearing pride shirts on the road. This reaffirms their identity. It reaffirms the fact that there are allies out there to find solidarity with, and they are able to reconcile their identity with daily life. Have a seat. Because currently, their identity and the way they live their lives is detached because they cannot find items to live their life and complement their sexuality. We solve that problem. Second level, on closeted LGBT individuals. We believe these individuals do so out of fear of rejection. But in a world where there's rainbow capitalism, A, it's more likely that they'll be able to come out because they know that society welcomes them. But B, even if they don't, we believe they are better able to practice their LGBT lifestyle in private, where they are able to access towards products catered towards them and approach it and buy those products. Third level, on heterosexual allies. We believe it's easier to express support. Comparatively to reading a journal and understanding queer theory, we could just buy a Pride t-shirt and then contribute to the LGBT cause as well. And corporations has the incentive to make these products as accessible as possible. Therefore, individuals are likely to buy cheaper products and better quality. But lastly, on bigots, we believe it's harder for bigots to act in a bigoted manner due to the increased visibility and exposure of the LGBT culture around them. Rainbow capitalism empowers the LGBT community economically as well as socially. It is about time we increase the number of countries that legalize LGBT marriages from 22 to all 196.
Thank you very much. We just spoke for 8 minutes, 20 seconds. To continue this round, we'd like to invite the second opposition here.
Hello.
Liza Minnelli is an icon of the LGBT movement, but is straight. The nuanced representation of the gay community for far too long has been dictated by straight people, has been represented by straight people, and has been whitewashed by straight people. 2 things I'll do in my speech. 1, I will tell you where the LGBT community are catered to better on 4 levels, and I'll present to you a substantive as to why it's harder to call companies out on their bigotry. The first thing I'll deal with, this whole efficiency of the free market. First response, notice that this argument assumes that more LGBT products are good without ever explaining to us why, and it only came out later. Second, I will debunk this premise that the main people we cater to in their world is LGBT people. Why? Number 1, notice that you have to cater to straight people in order to get the benefits that you want. If you want to have access to straight people, if you want to represent and allow straight people to relate to you and therefore give you acceptance, They have to become your main consumer base in their world. Because notice, the point in which you cater to LGBT people is also when you can't relate to straight people, but also when companies lose profit. So they have less incentive to cater to a smaller market base, heavy C, and more incentive to make it palatable to a larger amount of people. And that is why all the harms of stereotyping gay people and pandering to these individuals happen larger in your side. In order for companies to be profitable and relate to heteronormative culture, they have to espouse on the stereotypes of gay people, because that's the only way people will ever buy your products. How does this look like? Have you seen? So even if you cater to LGBT people, you only represent the whitest gay people, the most family-friendly people, and the femme lesbians. What does this mean? This means you create a behavioral expectation of how a gay person is supposed to act. The point in which they are not the way you perceive them to be, they're not family friendly, but rather hypersexualized like RuPaul is, you no longer accept them. You don't support them. Have you seen? You shame them and say that you're no longer deserving of my support. What's the harm here? They feel exceedingly left out in the world of proposition, the point in which the one community that was supposed to include them in those very struggles are now the community that kicks them out when it isn't beneficial to them anymore. I think it's extremely horrible. Have you seen? But notice the nuance here. That in order for corporations to be successful and to promote a certain trend so people buy their products, they have to take away a large part of representation from popular culture. This means that if you want family-friendly gay people in your advertisement, you have to demonize or leave out hypersexualized gay people. That means you're forced to entrench a certain stereotype in the world of proposition, because that's the only way your advertisements will ever be effective. Second, where is there more happiness? Happiness. Firstly, notice that the happiness you get on proposition is very exclusive in nature, because you feel left out. You have to pander to the most white gay people, to the most heteronormative gay people in their world. So it's a very exclusionary happiness. Secondly, I think it's contingent upon their wealth, because the only way you ever gain happiness is if you buy more and more products. So you entrench that metric even more. Have you seen? It's harder for a poor gay person to detach the metric of capitalism from his or her happiness. What's the comparative? In our world, we make that metric of capitalism weaker. They have more of a capacity to detach their happiness from that very capitalism, which means happiness is more accessible to a larger number of people in the world of opposition. Secondly, notice, have you seen, that only privileged gay people have access to these things. This means, as a poor African American, I cannot call or talk to my gay counterpart about the problems of race capitalism, because maybe they can access those same things. So you splinter the LGBT community, the point in which I, as an African American, cannot talk to my gay white counterpart about my struggles because they benefit off of rainbow capitalism. Have you seen? You make it harder for African Americans to represent their struggles in the gay community. They have less support structure to fall back upon the point in which they can't talk to other people. Have you seen? Fourthly, it's unlikely that your corporate structures are led by gay people, because the characterization from proposition is that the world is currently very heteronormative. So I don't see why corporate spheres are likely to be led by gay people in your world. Have you seen? But even if it's led by gay people, one, exclusionary to the most intersectional form of gay identity. Two, it's extremely short term because it's contingent upon you being able to buy more and more products. Lastly, I think you create a facade, because have you seen? People can deflect the fact that there is no representation of different forms of the gay identity by saying that we do make gay products, we do have these things. That means the point in which you call them out for not representing different identities is also the point in which they can deflect blame. So we are no longer able to pressure them for nuanced representation of the gay community, because they can hide under a facade and the guise that they are good people. Having seen. Thirdly, with regards to having a better fight. One, notice that in our it's slower, but the LGBT community can holistically represent the nuances of the community. We will take that trade-off. Even if we have a slower fight, we can slowly represent the whole gay community as opposed to entrenching stereotypes about them and making it harder for people to live their lives. Have you seen? Because notice that when you create a behavioral expectation, it's harder for a gay person who doesn't fit your stereotype to access his choice of that particular identity. Secondly, you have to produce it through stereotypes and entrench it, because that's the only way people will ever buy your product. Have you seen? Third, even if the fight is inaccessible to a lot of heteronormative straight people. We think it's comparatively better because we don't entrench stereotypes about gay people. They can act in peace, act better among their gay community because we don't set a behavioral expectation. Lastly, with regards to allies, I think allies are horrible if they only support you if you fit their version of a gay person. Having seen, they coerce you into becoming their version of a gay person, and you forever have to suppress your identity in the world of all. Lastly, this whole principle thing. One, I think having seen, you're complicit in the oppression that happens and they were largely unresponsive to it. Secondly, we don't think it should be exclusionary, and we think this is the overarching principle. In principle, you should always include everyone when the thing you hate as the LGBT community is exclusion in nature. But before I go on, sure.
So if rainbow capitalism creates a culture that is more LGBT friendly, why wouldn't corporations compete with each other to be more LGBT friendly and diversify their products?
One, notice that we told you that LGBT friendly means that you cater to the stereotypes of what straight people think is friendly to these individuals. Secondly, being LGBT friendly means pandering to the most white, the most privileged people in this community. That argument doesn't fly. But now my argument as to necessarily how we can call out companies better. The premise of this argument is twofold. One, companies still have bigoted or ignorant employees that still commit microaggressions or discriminatory practices in the workplace. Two, companies still sell goods to bigoted countries like Malaysia and Saudi Arabia even when they produce these products. What happens now? We allow them to claim to be pro-LGBT and hide under the facade that they are pro-LGBT. This means that when employers are called out for microaggressions, people no longer believe these employees. Companies can deflect blame and cover up the abuses that they have by claiming that they are pro-LGBT, by claiming that even though we have Saudi Arabia, we still cater to all you people here. And that makes it harder for us to scrutinize them, and that makes it harder for us to force them to reform. This means it's harder to serve justice for gay people. Notice that this directly contests the argument that gay people are more happy in the world of profit. Because I would contest that hidden insidious discrimination and the inability to call it out is more harmful than not being able to buy a t-shirt, because it is more integral to your livelihood. We should no longer allow straight people to tell us how a gay person should act and how a gay person should look. I've never been prouder to oppose.
To end the constructive case of side proposition, I'd like to invite the third proposition.
The success of The success of a minority group does not come by excluding themselves from mainstream visibility and avenues of happiness. In a world where 40% of the consumer base in the United States of America are members of the LGBT community, Side Proposition believes it's imperative that the market should facilitate this demand and allow them the ability to access this happiness. 3 issues in my speech. Firstly, which side of the house is appropriation worse in? Secondly, which gives better accessibility to LGBT community? And thirdly, can LGBT members be complicit to the harms of capitalism? Firstly, on appropriation. So let's clear this issue now. The market for the product is for homosexuals as well as for heterosexuals. As a result of companies trying to diversify and be as commercial as they can, they will cater for both of these communities. But let's take up at their case. First question under this issue: why is access more important than intersectionality? Because side opposition never once defended the comparative in this debate, which is that there is no representation of the LGBT community in their free market. This will mean you have less airtime for pride movements in their world because you don't have the money and the capital to make these commercial. You have less LGBT models because on a principle level, you cannot access capitalism. Because you don't have the money, you cannot gain a standing in a world that places a premium on the free market. Second level under this issue, regarding the trivialization, have a seat, and the downplaying of harms the community faces. I never understood once why a company wouldn't escalate the harms that the LGBT community faces. Because at the point at which they do escalate the harms, the impact of their products and the premium that these companies place in their pride products is much greater. That means these companies, as a result of escalating the harms community faces, are more likely to coerce people to buy these products in order to support the community. I think the commercial interest is what makes the representation of the harms community faces much better. Secondly, companies have an incentive to be the most marketable possible. So to avoid backlash, they are more likely in our world to employ different methods to avoid any form of backlash, such as hiring PR consultants from the LGBT community. They're more likely to do research to make their products the most marketable and to avoid any semblance of backlash. But the third thing I would say is that even if they do mess up and there are instances of appropriation that occur, we can call these instances out better. Two reasons why. Have a seat. Firstly, in the 21st century viral culture where activism is a trend, online people can have discourse. This means it's easier to post pictures on Twitter and call companies out for shaming the LGBT community. And these pictures can garner wide arrays of discourse because you can have more retweets, more likes, and reach a greater variety of people. The speakers before me claimed Zayn Malik came to gender because he wore women's clothes. Well, people demonize him for that. And that is because he was in a mainstream position of visibility. Have a seat. Secondly, the reason why calling out is easier under our world is because when companies make it in their mandate to invest in the LGBT community and their rights, we can call them out better. Because in the side of opposition, when any form of appropriation happens or stereotypes exist in the capital market, because companies never took that responsibility, it's harder to call them out. Companies can shift blame away and because they never had a responsibility to uphold the LGBT community. In our world, when they take that burden, it's easier to force them to fulfill it. But the third thing I will say on intersectionality is that this premise at its best is false, because I think companies have an incentive to be as broad as possible. Because if you ignore people of color in a capitalist market, you are ignoring a potential client base that you are alienating. This means companies are more likely to expand. In our world, products are more likely to be regional based or ethnic based. That means products on a qualitative level can better cater to niche communities than the world of opposition these individuals would not have access to. The comparative in the world of opposition is that there is a minimal ability for these individuals to gain happiness. Because this debate is not about removing capitalism. So the idea of materialism and the premium we place on objects is still there. But in that world, the kinds of happiness that you accrue to are kinds that are not indicative of your true identity. So the kinds of materialism LGBT communities will have to opt into are ones that are essentially heteronormative. I think that's far worse. Before I move on to my second issue, yes.
In order to promote a trend, you have to promote a linear, often family-friendly form of gay identity. Therefore, perpetuating and entrenching the stereotype that is the way a gay person should act in.
So the comparative under your world having no representation, no visibility, no way for the LGBT community, actual members within this community, to call out this misappropriation, I think that is far worse. Secondly, the idea of accessibility. Two levels under this. Firstly, this very vague idea of the erasure of the bi and trans community. I think the bi and trans community represent a brand that markets can tap into. In a world where you place a premium on capitalism, there's an incentive for companies as a result of broad competition to tap into these markets first. So they're more likely to create more products specifically for these communities. If that's a problem, side opposition had. Secondly, the erasure in the world of opposition is worse. Because we told you normalization of these sexual identities is more likely to happen when pride is more marketed, and we can see rainbows and flags on every single person. Because a greater access to notions of acceptance is under our world where the message has a greater reach and a greater capacity to reach places it otherwise wouldn't. So I think that is where erasure gets mitigated. Thirdly, on the idea of whether we cater to straight people exclusively. When 3.8% of individuals in the United States are members of the LGBT community, I don't know why companies wouldn't have an incentive to cater to them. As a result of competition, there's an incentive to be as commercial as possible. So we think under our world, there will be products for members of the LGBT community as well as products for the hetero community. Finally, on this idea of privileged individuals and them only being able to access any products. In your world, privileged individuals are the only ones who can access capitalism because they are the only ones who are affluent enough. In our world, as a result of competition, it means that we can bring prices down because companies have an incentive to make their products cheaper so more people can access these goods. If the wage gap in the LGBT community is as high as side opposition have claimed, companies have an incentive to make prices lower so more people can access these goods and they can better benefit off the market. Finally, can LGBT communities be complicit to capitalism? So in both worlds, LGBT communities will still support some form of capitalism. So they'll be still complicit to these sweatshops in third world countries that they claim. I don't know why there's a delineation within the two. But rather, I think the responsibility for the community should be one that caters to the happiness of members within this community. Inside opposition, the exclusion of that happiness is worse because the way in which they opt into that happiness is one that is primarily heteronormative. Finally, on standards, we concede in both worlds, standards, some form of standards of happiness will exist. But in our world, these standards are truer to the identity. At least when individuals opt into the facade of happiness, they opt into the facade of happiness that better caters to the niche of their own community. The free market will never truly be free if it excludes other identities from its very framework.
Now we end the constructive speeches for the side of the opposition. We'd like to invite the third opposition speaker.
No amount of money and material wealth can justify erasing individuals from communities and those corporations and pouncing on their so-called social justice cause in order to gain more profits. In order to truly protect the LGBT community, in order to truly protect every single one of that community, you must include them all, not only be exclusive. In my issue, I'll talk about which side is more inclusive for LGBT individuals and why corporations cannot take on the stance of intersectionality. And secondly, I'll talk about why this will, or which side would help gain more access for LGBT individuals and for that community. My first issue, which side is more inclusive for the LGBT individuals? Because they told us that products are made by pro-LGBT individuals, therefore our primary and main market will be LGBT consumers. I don't think that's true. Let's start with the premise. How do businesses operate and how do their business models look like? Take a seat. I think that most business models and corporations would prefer profit-oriented products of more often than not bigger margins of that profit. That is to say that if I commercialize pride, I would want more money. So my primary target would be the mass market for more cisgender straight consumers rather than LGBT individuals. Take a seat. Because more often than not, if you only sell to LGBT consumers, you are less likely to make a profit compared to the majority cisgender straight community that is more likely to bring you more margin profit. Take a seat. But even if the market is primarily for LGBT individuals, why do I think that this is still harmful? For two reasons. The first reason is because one, you exclude other minority LGBT individuals who are poorer. Because those products that you want them to access, or these products that you manufacture to provide, are only accessible to the richest. The reason why they made this argumentation is because they wanted to say, they wanted to mitigate the harms that happiness can only be achieved through wealth. Therefore, they include more LGBT products. The problem is, pride products also resides on this premise that in order to get more happiness out of those pride products, you are probably going to buy more expensive pride products, more branded pride products, products from Nike and products from more bigger corporations. Take a seat. That's why I say in competitive, maybe they cater to some LGBT individuals, but you increase the amount of discrimination towards the intersectional community of LGBT individuals. Why do I think that is true? Two reasons. The first reason is, if I'm a poor minority LGBT individual and I can't access those expensive goods, I'm less likely to have maybe some friends to be able to access those goods as well. So my friend can access those goods because he's more privileged than me, but I can't. Secondly, I will be more discriminated, take a seat, because my more privileged LGBT friend would tell me, why are you unhappy? Why can't you access those goods? Don't you have an alternative? The alternative is those pride products. But the problem is, I can't access those goods because I don't have the capital wealth in order to buy those products. The important part is, if you want to truly help LGBT intersectional individuals, don't set another standard for them to overcome. You set another standard for them to buy even more pride products, and that is more harmful. Take a seat. I don't believe in any way that the prices would drop. The prices would go higher. Because if their characterization was true, that this is a great representation and commercialization and ads have incredible influence, I think that you have consumer surplus. That would mean you're more likely to raise the price because you have more demand than supply. That would mean that prices will be higher in terms of products. The last thing I'll talk about in this issue is why corporations are less likely to feature or venture into the intersectional part of the LGBT community and will have less research and development. I will give you three reasons. The first reason is that these individuals or these corporations are less likely to research for more controversial and intersectional products. The reason is because your first form of initial commercialization, take a seat, attaches a behavioral notion or behavioral trait to LGBT communities that I expect this form of LGBT product to be produced the next time because it's the most palatable to me. So I'm less likely to therefore venture into intersectional products.
On that point.
Yeah, sure.
Fashion brands like H&M produce both frilly dresses and ripped jeans. Why must companies be selective in the kind of behavioral aspects they want to portray?
Yeah, they can produce a lot of different variety of products, but those models will always be the same privileged LGBT models. Those products will always be priced higher and they won't cater to intersectional individuals. I think this is the same for beauty products, that for a long time it has always been catered to fair-skinned individuals, provide more products would be for fair-skinned individuals. Second, you are less likely to move to a controversial trend because if you do so, your competition will take over the initial market share. Because if the intersectional part is of minority, you will lose more market share if you move on to a next trend, and your competitor would take advantage of that. So you are less likely to make risky decisions in which you will lose more profit margins. Take a seat. But even if you move to a more intersectional trend, why do I think corporations don't handle this well? Because if you were to move to a new intersectional trend, you will put emphasis on that new trend and you must diminish or ignore the pre-existing trend before that. That would mean if it's currently about privileged LGBT individuals and you venture to do that as intersectional, in order to prove that that trend is more palatable or more fashionable, you would first want to prove that the initial trend before that is not as good as the one that's intersectional. So I think that is extremely harmful when you try to dismiss a trend from before in order to promote one new trend. The last issue. Yes, before I move on to the last issue.
Even after you move on to intersectional forms of fashion trends, the white privileged people still need to wear clothes. Why do people move on and abandon the original trend they invested so much time and money into?
Yeah, because they invested so much time and money into, they're less likely to make risky decisions in order to venture into new trends. Thank you very much. Next issue. Will this gain more access for LGBT individuals? I think they say that this will give simple access is good because it's hard to access journals. Why I don't think this is true? One, your simple means that you allow most of your new accessible allies to just reject the nuances of the LGBT intersectionality. Because the comparative is, on your side, we can't call out these individuals. They would just reject the nuances of the intersectionality of LGBT individuals. Because the best thing, because all they would say is, I'm already wearing a pride t-shirt, I'm already representing you. Why am I still wrong? Why are you calling me out? Isn't this the representation that you want because it's commercialized right now? So it's less likely that these individuals can fully identify as an LGBT supporter rather one that is only for the majority and less more exclusive LGBT individuals. So it's much more harder to call out these individuals because these individuals would prefer a more expected trait of the LGBT community in which yours does not fit into. The last thing I'll talk about is that even if we have no representation, which I think is extreme, maybe probably less because we still have campaigns and we still have riots and protests. Let's say that we don't have representation at all. Why do we prefer that? Because I would prefer a progression of the LGBT movement that is not wrong. That is not wrong in terms of representation. Because your progression has a deadline which I cannot extend further when I want to move into intersectionality. Ours is slow, but ours has a longer reach. The conclusion is, if you want to truly protect these individuals, don't take the easier way. Go through and discuss the grassroots problems of these individuals before you want to help them. Yeah.
Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Now we move on to the second part of this debate, which are the replies. We'd like to invite the opposition replies.
Pride was a protest. Pride was the community. But when corporations decided to sponsor Pride, enter our realms, take our messages, sell us out to attain profit, we lost that protest. This is the protest that will never be able to be relived in the world of government. There are two issues that define this debate. The first, if access is great and whether that should be a part of the debate. And secondly, in which world is the LGBT community a better community? I will do so in two ways. The first issue, is access great? Notice, the contention coming from us was not that we have less products. It's the contention that we brought to you was that if your products are not fully representative of the community, we would rather you not have those products to begin with. Time and time again, we have asked, why is it only the white individuals within the community that get these products? Why are the black individuals within the community actively deprioritized? Why is their ability to feel happy less important? Questions that was ignored time and time again. But secondly, we told you that even in instances where representation exists, the way the portrayal works is problematic for two reasons. In the Leader of Opposition speech, we told you that it is based on palatability. What is most relatable to the most people? What the most people think the LGBT community is. This is why individuals are more likely to sympathize with heteronormative individuals like Neil Patrick Harris because he's the most palatable version of a straight person. He's the most relatable person compared to RuPaul. He's called over-sexualized. All of this happens more in the world of government. So what is the conclusion to this issue? If your access steps and sets standards upon individuals, standards that not everyone can access, standards that are discriminatory in nature, we would prefer you not have that access. Secondly, let's talk about the LGBT community. And I've been told that evidence is not important, but I'm going to call them up because they brought some crazy statistics in this debate. First, 3.8% of the population are LGBT, but they account for 48% of the violations. What is this, guys? Where did you get your statistics from? Yeah, please clarify. So what this means is that if the individuals, so let's be on the more reasonable ground, that most individuals in these communities are straight, they're heteronormative in nature, companies would pander towards these individuals. Yes, they would have products that are geared towards the LGBT community, but the way those products were created were not for them. They were created for the straight people first, you second. In their world, the trends that decide and the trends that are set upon LGBT individuals are decided by straight individuals. What this means that we would prefer not having that. The second issue, let's talk about the LGBT community and where it's better. They claim that in their world, when it's more palatable and it's more relatable, the LGBT community is better because they have a platform. We contested this and told you that that platform is bad. The allies you gave would only accept the most basic version of the LGBT community. This means that you're going to pigeonhole your LGBT community to serve a certain kind of standard, a certain kind of gay person. How do you move on from the theory to the theory of microaggression if the only focus a straight person has is love wins? We need to have these complex discussions, and corporations erase the ability for us to have those complex discussions because they misrepresent the message of the community, and they take away our ability to have those conversations because they're more powerful, they're more airtime limits, and our ability to have those conversations is hindered. Pride is us. Pride is a product. It belongs to us, individuals, not corporations that want profit. Thank you.
All right, and to end this grand finals, we'd like to invite the government reply speaker.
Yes. As much as we all love to have a good laugh at Monday for screwing up statistics, we don't think it is fair for opposition to dismiss the fact that 4.8% of the US population is 18 million people. 18 million people who are willing and able to purchase products if it is supplied. We don't think it is fair for opposition to just say that since there are more people out there compared to the LGBT community, we won't care about them. We don't think that is how the real world works. Three issues in which we win this debate. Firstly, on the issue of principle. Because they brought forth one principle of complicity. We already told you that the LGBT never ran on the platform of Marxism, that we will be somewhat complicit in some forms of capitalism and some forms of homophobia. Otherwise, people will never take office, people will never participate in any form of institution. We don't think complicity is the most important principle. Instead, we brought you birth lottery, and it's something that didn't respond. We told you that while LGBT individuals who have no control over the circumstances of their birth must not be placed in a further disadvantageous position in this materialistic society. Their only response was, if only some people can get rich, let's all be poor. We don't think there's a fair burden to place on the LGBT community, and therefore we win on principle. Secondly, on access. And here is where we told you we better characterize how the free market works. Because we don't think the free market was ever one that chooses markets. They go into everything. They go into ripped products with ripped jeans, they go into products with free dresses, and if it is true that certain forms of products induce certain forms of behavioral aspects, H&M will never take on the venture of trying to portray girls in a feminine manner and in a masculine manner. We don't think that is true. We think a profit incentive of corporation means they will diversify, they will compete, they will bring down prices, they will improve quality, and if societal messages is what they want to talk about, they will upscale on those societal messages. All of which we've heard no response to. And I believe this is particularly important because this takes out your argument about how the poor black individual cannot have access to products. They can, because they are a market, and therefore these corporations will go into those markets. Take more the analysis on research and development about how corporations are more incentivized to find out the specific needs and wants of this community. Their only response was, if I get a poorer version of the product, I might as well get none. I don't think that is very fair. I think individuals at the very least want some form of ability to reconcile their sexuality and the way they live their lives in this current society. I don't think it is fair to ask LGBT individuals to choose between living up to their sexuality or living in this society. But thirdly, on the movement itself. Firstly, we already told you why it is easier to call out corporations in the world of proposition. Because they never responded to the fact that when corporations commit to the LGBT cause, when they have pride campaigns and they sponsor these events, it is easier to hold them accountable compared to a world where they never committed to doing so. No response coming from opposition. But the only thing they want to talk about was normalization of ideas. And we told you how nitty-gritty parts of queer theory, which is presented in the form of journals or scholarly articles, is
not accessible to the vast amount of public. And as much as we love for everyone to understand what it means to have microaggression, we all need an entry point into this discussion. And that entry point is when we see an individual wearing a Pride t-shirt, and we are able to see products catered for the LGBT community being sold at our local stores. That entry point is something they never tackled, and they wanted to go straight into the nitty-gritty parts, which proves to is highly unfeasible. As much as we love everyone to be academia and live in debate land, this is the real world. Let us empower the most vulnerable in that world.
All right, thank you very much to both teams for that excellent round. Please cross laws, shake hands, judges. Let's